Eliza Brody's father, Jedediah, vanished from Deadwood, leaving only one clue: his prized silver-inlaid reins soaked in blood. The trail led away from the ramshackle safety of the mining camp, deep into the sacred, hostile heart of the Black Hills. She followed it, her father's .73 Winchester in hand, expecting to find the man who killed him. Instead, she found a single, wounded Lakota warrior clutching her father's leather scrip bag. But saving the man who might be her father's murderer was only the beginning. She had no idea that by dawn she wouldn't be the hunter. She would be the prey, surrounded by war paint. The air in Deadwood, Dakota Territory, tasted of pine resin, raw sawdust, and the metallic tang of desperation. It was 1876, and the town was a ragged wound gouged into the belly of the Black Hills, a place built on rumor, whiskey, and the yellow fever of gold. For Eliza Brody, it was just home, or what passed for it. She ran the Brody and Son livery, though the son part was a hopeful fiction. It was just her and her father, Jedediah. At 23, Eliza was leaner than a willow switch and twice as tough. She could shoe a draft horse, mend a axle, and shoot the eye out of a hawk at 50 paces. She had to be. Jedediah, a good man with a bad love for prospecting, was more dream than substance. He'd been gone 3 days. This wasn't unusual. He'd often ride out to check his claims near the northern hills. But he never missed a freight delivery, and the Wells Fargo wagon was due. Eliza was pitching fresh hay into a stall, the dust motes dancing in the slanted morning light, when she saw it. Tucked behind a water barrel, half covered by a discarded canvas tarp, was a glint of metal. Her stomach hollowed out. She pulled the tarp away. It was Jedediah's show bridle, the one he'd won in a card game in Cheyenne, with the conchos of Mexican silver hammered into the leather. And it was stiff and dark crimson. The leather was soaked in it. A thick, viscous trail of dried blood led from the bridle, across the packed earth of the stable floor, and out the back door, which was splintered at the jamb. A struggle. Not just a missing man, an abduction. Or worse. Her hands, calloused and strong, began to tremble. She ran to the peg where her father kept his gear. His rifle was gone. His bedroll was gone. But his canteen, the old dented Army Issue 1, was still there. Jedediah never went anywhere without his canteen. She forced the panic down, compressing it into a cold, hard diamond of resolve. She saddled Boudica, her steel-grey mare, checking the cinch twice. She slid her own Winchester into the scabbard, grabbed her father's spare rifle, a heavy .50 caliber Sharps, and looped a box of cartridges onto her belt. She filled Jedediah's canteen and tied it to her saddle horn. The blood trail, already fading under the Dakota sun, was plain enough to her practiced eye. It wasn't the steady, dripping trail of a wounded man walking. It was the sporadic, scuffed trail of a body being dragged, then loaded onto a horse. It led north, away from Deadwood, away from the safe zone, and into the Paha Sapa, the lands promised to the Lakota by the Fort Laramie Treaty, the lands that Custer's expedition had proven were full of gold, rendering the treaty worthless, the lands from which prospectors, more and more often, did not return. Eliza Brody kicked Boudica into a steady trot, her face a mask of stone. She wasn't a child. She knew what was out there. But somewhere in that vast, dangerous green, her father had bled. She would follow the trail until it ended. For 2 days, she rode. The trail was old, but the men who'd left it were clumsy. They were miners, not trackers. They left broken branches, overturned rocks, and the deep, obvious prints of shod horses, 3 of them, one heavily burdened. The landscape of the Black Hills was a deceptive god. One moment, she was in a meadow of waving grass so beautiful it ached. The next, she was navigating a graveyard of granite spires that clawed at the sky. The silence was absolute, broken only by the cry of a red-tailed hawk or the unnerving chatter of a rattlesnake she'd nearly missed. She was a ghost in her own land. She drank sparingly, ate jerky, and slept cold, her back against Boudica for warmth, her rifle in her arms. On the afternoon of the second day, the trail vanished. It just stopped. It led into a wide, shallow creek, and the tracks disappeared on the other side, lost in a jumble of shale and pine needles. They had covered their trail, but why now? Eliza dismounted, her frustration a bitter taste. She walked the bank, scanning for any sign. Nothing. She was about to give up, to cast a wider circle, when Boudica's ears pricked forward, swiveling toward a dense thicket of aspen trees upriver. The mare nickered, low and nervous. "What is it, girl?" Eliza whispered, drawing her Winchester. She tied the mare to a low branch and moved forward on foot, stepping from rock to rock, as silent as the shadow of the hawk above. There was a smell on the wind. Beneath the pine, there was the coppery reek of old blood. She pushed aside the aspen branches and froze. It wasn't a thicket. It was the mouth of a hidden ravine, a deep cut in the earth concealed by the trees. The trail picked up again here, but it was different. It was frantic, smeared, and it was fresh. She chambered around, the shick-shick sound, offensively loud in the quiet. She slid down the loose scree into the ravine. And there he was. He wasn't her father. He was a Lakota warrior. He was slumped against a rock, his body a map of pain. He looked young, no older than her, with a strong jaw and hair that fell in 2 black braids. He wore only a breechcloth and moccasins. His chest and arms were slick with blood, but the source was a dark, seeping wound low on his side, just above the hip, a gunshot, a Winchester wound by the looks of it, and a bad one. He was dying. His eyes snapped open as her shadow fell on him. They were black, depthless, and full of a burning, defiant hatred. His hand scrabbled weakly for the knife at his belt, but it fell from his fingers. Eliza stood there, her rifle leveled. This was the enemy, the hostile that the Deadwood pioneer screamed about. The man who, for all she knew, was part of the band that took her father. Then she saw what he was clutching in his other hand. It was her father's leather scrip bag, the small pouch where Jedediah kept his map, his permits, and a small, worn daguerreotype of her mother. A cold, electric rage surged through her. "Where did you get that?" she snarled, stepping closer, the rifle muzzle aimed at his chest. The warrior just stared, his breath coming in shallow, wet rasps. He said nothing. "Did you kill him?" Eliza demanded, her voice shaking. "Where is he?" He met her gaze, and she saw something that stopped her. It wasn't malice, it was confusion, and a pain so profound it transcended language. He was looking at her, but seeing something else. Her eyes dropped from his face to the wound. It was festering, the edges angry and green. He'd been shot days ago, probably in the same fight that took her father. He hadn't just been left here, he had escaped here. She was a tracker. She could read a story in the dirt, and the story here was wrong. The smeared trail, the desperation. He had been the one dragged. She looked at the bag in his hand. He wasn't holding it in triumph. He was clutching it like a lifeline. "Damn you," she whispered. She was no sawbones, but she knew a mortal wound when she saw one. If she left him, he'd be dead by morning. The safe thing to do. The right thing, according to Deadwood. But she also saw the boot prints around him. American-made, hobnailed, the same prints she'd been following. They shot him. The same men who took her father. He wasn't the killer. He was a victim. Just like Jedediah. "Damn it all to hell," Eliza said, lowering the rifle. He flinched as she knelt, his hand weakly rising to ward her off. "Hold still," she ordered, her voice rough. "This is going to hurt." She slung the rifle, unhooked her father's canteen, and ripped a strip of cloth from her own petticoat. The warrior watched her, his eyes blazing with mistrust, but he was too weak to fight. "You and me," she muttered, pouring precious water onto the rag. "We've got the same enemies." She pressed the wet cloth to the wound. He hissed, a sound like a snake, and his body arched in agony before he finally, mercifully, succumbed to the blackness. The sky, sensing the vulnerability of the two figures in the ravine, turned a bruised and heavy purple. A low rumble of thunder echoed off the granite walls. A storm was coming in fast from the north. Eliza worked with a grim, practiced efficiency. The bullet was still in him. She couldn't get it out. Not here. Not with just a skinning knife. All she could do was clean the wound and stop the bleeding. She dragged the warrior. He was heavier than he looked, all corded muscle, under a shallow overhang of rock. She built a small, smokeless fire from dry tinder she kept in her saddlebag, shielding its light with her body. She heated water from the canteen in her small tin cup and washed the wound as best she could. He was delirious. He thrashed, his limbs flailing, and spoke in a language that sounded like rushing water and sharp stones. She held him down, her own muscles straining. He was burning with fever. She recognized the plants her father had taught her. She found a patch of yarrow nearby, crushed the leaves, and made a poultice, packing it into the wound to staunch the bleeding. She tore more strips from her petticoat and bound his side tightly. The storm broke. Rain fell in solid, wind-driven sheets, turning the ravine into a momentary river. The overhang protected them, but the temperature plummeted. The warrior's fever spiked. His eyes rolled, and he cried out a single word, over and over. "Vane! Vane!" The name meant nothing to her. It was just a sound. She huddled against the cold rock, her knees drawn to her chest, her rifle across her lap. She was trapped with a dying man who held the only clue to her father's fate. She looked at the scrip bag, which had fallen from his grasp. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. She paused. It felt like stealing. But this was her father. She opened the clasp. Inside was the map, covered in Jedediah's spidery handwriting, marking a creek fork, the permits, and the small, tin-framed image of her mother, Lucinda. Eliza's throat tightened, but tucked behind the photo was something else. A small blue-black feather, tied with a single strand of sinew, a bluebird's feather. It was Lakota. Why would her father have this? The warrior groaned, his teeth chattering. He was freezing, his skin clammy. The fever was burning him up, but the cold was killing him. Eliza made a decision. It was pragmatic, not kind. She couldn't let him die. Not until he told her what he knew. She unbound her bedroll and, with a sigh of disgust and resignation, lay down beside him, draping the heavy wool blanket over them both. She pressed her back against his, sharing her body heat, her rifle still clutched between them. It was the strangest, most terrifying night of her life. She lay rigid, smelling the sweat, blood, and the faint, earthy scent of him. She was lying next to everything she'd been taught to fear. Yet, under the blanket, he was just a man, shuddering and weak, his life flickering like a guttering candle. She didn't sleep. She watched the rain, listened to his fevered murmurs, and clutched the photograph of her mother. Sometime before dawn, the fever broke. The rain had stopped. The air was cold and clean. She felt him stir beside her. His breathing was no longer ragged, but deep and even. The shivering had stopped. She turned her head. His eyes were open. They were clear, and they were watching her. The silence in the ravine was absolute. He didn't move. She didn't move. The hatred was gone from his gaze. In its place was a profound, weary, and bottomless confusion. He looked at the blanket covering them, at her face so close to his, at the rifle she still held. Eliza was the first to look away. She felt a flush of heat creep up her neck that had nothing to do with the shared warmth. She scrambled out from under the blanket, putting a safe distance between them. "You're awake," she said, her voice sounding unnaturally loud. He said nothing. He pushed himself up on one elbow, his face contorting as the movement pulled at his wound. He looked at the fresh binding. He looked at the empty tin cup by the dead fire. Then he did something that surprised her. He met her eyes and gave a short, sharp nod. It wasn't gratitude. It was an acknowledgement. A fact. "I am alive. You did this." "My father," Eliza said, holding up the script bag. "Jedediah Brody." "Where is he?" He just stared. The language barrier was a wall as high and hard as the granite cliffs around them. "Vane," she tried, remembering the fever word. "Who is Vane?" At that name, his face changed. The confusion vanished, replaced by a cold, hard obsidian. His hand instinctively went to his knife sheath, only to find it empty. Eliza had moved it, just out of his reach. His eyes darted to the mouth of the ravine, then back to her. He was sizing her up. He was weak, but he was a warrior. She was a woman, but she had the rifle. Before this silent standoff could escalate, a sound shattered the morning. It was a horse, nickering. Not Boudica. A different horse. Eliza spun, leveling her rifle toward the mouth of the ravine. The warrior, she had to stop calling him that, he had a name, tried to sit up, a warning grunt in his throat. A shadow fell over them, then another, and another. Eeling herself against the rock, Eliza looked up. Silhouetted against the pale grey dawn sky were a dozen men. They were on horseback, and they weren't white. They were Lakota. They were dressed for war. Their faces were starkly marked with paint, black for victory, red for blood. They held lances, bows, and several had repeating rifles. Eliza's blood ran cold. She was trapped. One warrior, broad and scarred, dismounted and strode into the ravine. His eyes swept over the scene, taking in the bound warrior, the white woman with the rifle, and the scrip bag on the ground between them. His lip curled in a snarl. He barked a command. Eliza didn't understand the word, but she understood the intent. The warrior on the ground, her warrior, cried out, a weak, protesting sound. The scarred warrior ignored him. He backhanded Eliza across the face. The world exploded in white light. Her rifle clattered to the rocks. Hand seized her, binding her wrists with brutal efficiency. She had followed the blood trail. She had saved a man's life. And now, as the sun's first light hit the canyon wall, she was a prisoner, surrounded by war paint. They dragged her from the ravine. The scarred warrior, who the others called Hoka, Badger, stalked over to the man she had saved. Hoka spoke, his voice a low, angry growl. The wounded warrior, whose name she learned was Tokahe, goes first, answered weakly, gesturing to his wound and then to Eliza. Hoka was not convinced. He saw a Wasichu, white person, woman, a wounded warrior, and a bag of white man's belongings. The story to him was simple. She had shot Tokahe and was robbing him when they arrived. Eliza, her hands tied so tightly her fingers were already numb, was thrown unceremoniously onto Boudica. Her rifles were taken. A brave mounted her mare behind her, holding her reins and a knife to her back. Tokahe was lifted more gently onto a travois. He was weak, but his eyes followed her, a frustrated, powerless anger in them. The war party moved out. They rode hard and fast, not with the clumsiness of the prospectors, but with the fluid silence of a people who were part of the land itself. They wove through canyons, up game trails Eliza never would have found, always climbing, deeper and deeper into the granite sanctuary of the Paha Sapa. Eliza was terrified, but a cold fury kept the panic at bay. She thought of her father. This was a disaster. She was no closer to finding him, and she was about to join him, wherever he was. They rode for hours. Her mind raced. She thought about Silas Vane, the name Tokahe had spoken. She looked at the warriors. Their paint was fresh, but their horses were tired. They were returning from a fight. Late in the afternoon, they crested a high ridge. Eliza gasped. Below them, hidden in a valley blessed with a wide stream and a stand of cottonwoods, was a village. It was not the massive encampment she'd heard about in Deadwood, the ones of Sitting Bull or Crazy Horse. This was a smaller, more desperate band, perhaps 30 tipis. The air smelled of wood smoke, curing hides and horses. As they rode down, the village erupted. Children stopped their games and stared. Women, dressing a buffalo carcass near the creek, looked up, their knives pausing. Their faces were a mixture of curiosity and open hostility. Hoka, the war chief, barked an order. Eliza was pulled from Boudica and shoved into the center of the camp. The brave tied her tether to a tall pole, the one used for drying meat, and left her there, exposed. A crowd gathered. They pointed. They spoke. The word wasichu was repeated, spat like a curse. An older woman, her face a mask of grief, ran forward and spat on Eliza's boot. Tokahe was carried from the travois and taken immediately to a large, painted tipi at the center of the camp, the medicine lodge. Hoka followed him in, and Eliza was left to wait. The sun beat down on her. Her arms ached. Children, growing bolder, crept closer, poking her with sticks. She stood as tall as she could, refusing to show fear, her eyes fixed on the entrance of the medicine lodge. Hours passed. The sun began to dip, painting the sky in violent streaks of orange and purple. Finally, Hoka emerged from the lodge, followed by an old frail man with eyes like polished stones, the medicine man, the Wikasa Wakan. Hoka approached Eliza. He held her father's scrip bag. "Where you get?" he demanded in broken, harsh English. Eliza's head snapped up. He spoke English. "It is my father's," she said, her voice hoarse. "Jedediah Brody. Men took him from Deadwood. I followed their trail." Hoka's face darkened. "You lie. You follow him," he gestured to the lodge. "You shoot, you steal." "No!" Eliza shouted, straining against the ropes. "The men who took my father, they shot him too. They left him to die. I helped him." Hoka laughed, a short, barking sound. "A white woman helps a Lakota, as the wolf helps the deer." "His name is Vane," Eliza yelled, the name feeling sharp on her tongue. Tokahe said his name. Vane. At the mention of the name, Hoka's expression faltered. He clearly recognized it. The Wikasa Wakan stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Eliza. He spoke to Hoka in Lakota, his voice calm and reasonable. Hoka replied, angry and dismissive. The flap of the lodge opened again. 2 braves emerged, carrying Tokahe. He was pale, but his eyes were clear. They set him down on a buffalo robe near the central fire. His mother, a stern-faced woman named Tashina, her robe, knelt beside him, offering him water. Hoka was his brother. The family resemblance was clear. "Brother," Hoka said in Lakota, his voice softer now, The Wasatchu Witch claims she did not shoot you. She says she helped you. She speaks the name of the whiskey trader, Vane." Tokahe looked at Eliza, who was watching him, her heart pounding. His gaze was unreadable. This was it. Her life was in his hands. He could save her, or he could let her die to appease his tribe. Tokahe spoke. His voice was weak, but it carried in the silence. He spoke for a long time. He described the ambush, the white men, the fight, the long, agonizing crawl to the ravine. Then he described waking up to the rain, the pain gone, a fire burning, and the Wasatchu woman sleeping beside him, her rifle between them. He pointed to the bound wound. "She did this," he said simply. "The whiskey trader's bullet was killing me. She used her medicine. She saved my life." A murmur went through the crowd. Tashina, his mother, looked at Eliza with a new, calculating expression. Hoka was furious. "He is delirious. The fever has cooked his mind. She is a spy. The pony soldiers will follow her." "I am no spy," Eliza yelled. "I am looking for my father." Tokahe spoke again, cutting off his brother. "She speaks the truth. The men who shot me, they had another captive, an older man with a grey beard. They called him Jed. They were angry at him. Something about a map." Eliza's knees buckled. "He's alive," she whispered. "Jedediah, he's alive." Hoka looked at Tokahe, then at Eliza, his face a storm of indecision. He was a war chief. He had lost men in the skirmish he was returning from. His instinct was to kill her. But Tokahe was his brother, and he did not lie. "You will not be killed," Hoka declared, striding over to Eliza. He used his knife to cut her ropes, but only to retie her with a longer tether to the post. "Not yet. You are a prisoner. Tokahe will heal. If he dies from the white man's wound, you will pay for it." He stalked off. The crowd dispersed, leaving Eliza alone again, tied to a pole in the center of an enemy camp, with the most terrifying and fragile gift a person could receive, a sliver of hope. Days bled into a week. Eliza's life became a strange, suspended ritual. She remained tethered, a living exhibit of the Wasatchu world. Tashina, Tokahe's mother, brought her food, a bitter, gritty corn mush and scraps of tough buffalo meat. It was the food of a prisoner, but it was food. Tokahe was recovering. The yarrow poultice and Eliza's binding had held. The fever was gone. The Wikasawakan tended to him daily, applying his own mixtures of herbs and singing the ancient songs. Tokahe would sit outside the tipi, wrapped in a robe, watching the camp life. And watching her. The language barrier remained, but a new communication formed. When Tashina brought her water, Eliza would look at Tokahe and nod. "Thank you," she'd say. He would nod back. He began to walk, slowly, his hand pressed to his side. The children, seeing he did not hate her, stopped their taunts. One small girl with bright, curious eyes dared to roll a small, painted rock to Eliza's feet. Eliza, tethered as she was, rolled it back. A silent, forbidden game. But Hoka watched her with unwavering suspicion. He was the chief, responsible for his people's safety. The tribe was suffering. The buffalo were scarce, driven away by the miners. The treaty goods promised by the government at the Red Cloud Agency were moldy flour and thin blankets. Hoka saw Eliza as a vanguard, the first sign of the blue-coated wave that would come to wipe them out. One afternoon, Tokahe approached her. He stood just outside the circle her tether allowed. "Vane," he said, testing the English word. "Yes," Eliza said, standing up. "Silas Vane, you know him." Tokahe's face was grim. "Whiskey trader. He trades rifles. For gold." Eliza's blood chilled. "Gold! My father is a prospector. He had a map." Tokahe nodded. He pointed to the north. "Vane, go. Take Jed. He took my father, Eliza breathed. Where? Where did they go? Tokahe struggled, gesturing. A place of stone. He has men. Bad men. A new, cold dread settled on Eliza. Her father wasn't just a captive. He was a prisoner of a man who knew the Lakota, who traded with them, and who was ruthless enough to kill for a map. The relative peace of the camp was shattered the next morning by a shout from the lookout. A lone rider was approaching. Not army. A white man. Hoka and his warriors grabbed their rifles. The village tensed. The rider stopped his horse at the edge of the camp and raised his hand in the sign of peace. Eliza, watching from her post, felt her stomach drop to her boots. She knew that slouch. She knew that greasy buckskin jacket, the one with the missing ear on the right side. The man dismounted, a wide, false smile on his face, revealing teeth stained black with tobacco. He was carrying a rifle Eliza knew well. A heavy .50 caliber Sharps, with a distinctive crack in the stock that Jedediah had mended with brass wire, her father's rifle. "Hoka, my friend!" the man boomed, walking into the camp as if he owned it. "I come to trade." It was Silas Vane. He hadn't seen her yet. He was focused on Hoka, pulling a glass bottle of amber liquid from his saddlebag. "Good whiskey." "For my friends." Hoka did not take it. His eyes were like chips of ice. "We are not your friends, Skitawakan. Bad man. You bring death." Vane's smile faltered, turning into a sneer. "Is that any way to greet an old partner? I've got repeating rifles for you, good ones. All I need is a little information." His eyes scanned the camp, and then they found her. He froze. His jaw went slack. The whiskey bottle slipped from his fingers and smashed on the rocks. "Well, I will be damned," Silas Vane whispered. He stared at Eliza, tied to the post. He looked at Hoka. He looked at Tokahe, who was now standing, his hand on his knife, his face a mask of pure loathing. The pieces clicked into place in Vane's cunning, wretched mind. He saw the wounded warrior. He saw the white woman who'd been asking questions in Deadwood. He realized the witness he'd left for dead had not only survived, but had been found by the Wasichu girl. And Silas Vane, a creature of pure survival, did the only thing he could. He attacked. "Hoka!" he yelled, pointing a finger at Eliza. "This woman, she is bad medicine. She is a liar. She's the one who shot your brave." Eliza screamed. "No, he did. He's the one." "She works for the army," Vane roared, his voice desperate. "She's a spy. She came here to find your camp, to lead the soldiers here, to slaughter your women and children. She's been telling me. We were partners." Hoka looked at Eliza, his face contorted in a mask of betrayal. This confirmed every suspicion he'd ever had. "No!" Eliza cried, pulling at her rope. "He's the killer. He has my father's rifle. Look, the Sharps on his back." Hoka looked at the rifle. He didn't recognize it. "She's lying," Vane said. "I bought this in Deadwood. She's smart, this one. She's trying to turn you against me. Kill her, Hoka. Kill her, and I'll give you 10 rifles." The warriors raised their weapons, aiming them at Eliza. This was it. She was dead. "Wait!" Tokahe's voice, strong and clear, cut through the tension. He walked forward, stepping between the warriors and Eliza. He faced his brother. "He lies," Tokahe said in Lakota. "Brother, move aside," Hoka commanded. "She has fooled you." "No, he is the one who shot me," Tokahe said, his eyes never leaving Vane. "He and his men. They had the old one, Jed. Vane wanted the map. The old one refused. Vane, he was going to kill him. I intervened. I freed the old man's horse." Eliza's heart stopped. Freed the horse. Her father had a chance. Vane's men shot me, Tokahe continued, and Vane took the old man. This woman, she speaks the name Vane because I spoke it in my fever. She did not know it before. She is not his partner. Silas Vane, realizing he had lost, did not wait for the translation. His smile was gone, replaced by the naked panic of a cornered rat. His hand blurred as it dropped to the Colt at his hip. He wasn't aiming at Hoka. He was aiming at Tokahe, the witness. "Tokahe, no!" Eliza shrieked. Vane fired. Tokahe, weakened by his wound, was fast, but Vane was faster. The bullet sang past Tokahe's head, grazing his shoulder. It wasn't a killing shot, but it spun him around. In that same instant, Hoka, his rage finally given a target, threw his war lance. It flew across the camp circle and embedded itself deep in Vane's thigh, pinning him to the ground. Vane screamed, a high, thin sound. He dropped his pistol and clawed at the shaft. Hoka was on him in 3 strides, his long knife in his hand. He pressed the blade to Vane's throat. The camp was utterly silent, save for Vane's pathetic whimpers. "Where is the old man?" Hoka growled in English. "Dead! Dead!" Vane gurgled, blood from his leg pooling around him. "I killed him. They're all dead." "Liar!" Eliza screamed. "Tokahe said you took him. Where is he?" Vane, seeing the black, merciless resolve in Hoka's eyes, changed his tactic. "Alive! He's alive! At my claim! Up in the high rocks, near Harney's Peak. He's digging for me. He's the only one who can read the map." "How many men?" Hoka demanded. 15, 20, Vane spat, then coughed. "You go up there. You'll all die. They're waiting for me. If I'm not back by tomorrow, they kill him. You need me. Let me go, and I'll trade him for my life." Hoka looked at Tokahe, who was clutching his bleeding shoulder, his face pale but resolute. He looked at Eliza, her face a mask of desperate hope. This was not his fight. His people were starving. The army was sweeping the hills. Going after 20 armed Wasichu in their own stronghold was suicide. But Vane had shed his brother's blood. He had invaded their Vitan, and he had brought this trouble. "You need him," Eliza said, her voice shaking but clear. "He knows the way, and you need me." Hoka turned to her, his contempt plain. "We need you?" "You've never fought these men," Eliza said, stepping as close as her tether would allow. "They aren't soldiers. They're killers. They're prospectors. They fight dirty. They'll have traps. They'll have dynamite. But I know how they think. I've lived with them. I can shoot." She nodded at her Sharps rifle, which a brave was still holding. "I can shoot better than any of them." Hoka stared at her. The idea was absurd. A white woman, fighting with them. Tokahe spoke, his voice low. "She is right, brother. She is not a Wasichu, not like him. She has a wolf's heart, and it is her father." Hoka made his decision. He was a war chief, and this was a war. He pressed his knife, and Vane shrieked again, but Hoka didn't cut his throat. He sliced the ropes binding Vane's jacket. "Bind his leg," he ordered Tashina, "tightly. If he bleeds to death, he is useless." He then strode to Eliza, and, with one clean cut, sliced her tether. The rope fell away. She was free. "You will ride with us," Hoka said to her. "You will show us what you can do. You will have your rifle." He grabbed her chin, his fingers like steel, forcing her to meet his gaze. "But you are not one of us. You are a tool, and if you betray us, I will kill you myself." Eliza didn't flinch. "You'll have to stand in line," she said. "Vane's men will try first. Now give me my rifle. We're burning daylight." Hoka held her gaze for a long second, then gave a short, sharp nod of respect. He barked orders. A war party was assembled in minutes. 10 warriors, the best he had. Tokahe, despite his new wound, insisted on going. Hoka argued, but one look at his brother's face told him it was useless. They tied Silas Vane, bound and gagged, onto his own horse. Eliza was given Boudica, her sharps, and her Winchester. As she mounted, Tashina pressed something into her hand. It was a small leather pouch of wasna, dried meat, berries and tallow, energy for the fight. Eliza looked at the older woman. Tashina's eyes were hard, but they held no malice. "Bring my sons home," she said in Lakota. Eliza didn't understand the words, but she understood the meaning. She nodded. With Hoka in the lead, the small, desperate party of Lakota warriors, one wounded prisoner and one white woman, rode out of the valley, racing the sunset. They were an impossible, unholy alliance, bound by blood, heading for a fight they had no chance of winning. They rode through the night, guided by a chained and sullen Silas Vane. He led them high into the granite heart of the Black Hills, to a place the Lakota avoided, a desolate, wind-scoured region of fractured rock known to miners as the Devil's Quarry. The claim was a natural fortress. It was a box canyon, accessible by only one narrow trail, which Vane's men had fortified with a crude breastwork of piled stones. Hoka, Eliza, and Tokahe crept forward at dawn, scouting the perimeter. They could see the camp, a dozen men, hard cases all, huddled around a fire, and tied to a picket pin like an animal was a gaunt, grey-bearded man in ripped clothes. Jedediah. Eliza's breath caught in her throat. He was alive. He was alive. "One way in," Hoka whispered in his broken English. "Too many rifles." "They have lookouts," Eliza whispered back, pointing. "One up there on the ridge, and another. See the glint, by that tall pine." Tokahe nodded. "Two men. They watch the trail. We cannot get in?" "But they have to come out," Eliza said, her mind racing. "For water. The stream is down there, outside the canyon." "We wait," Hoka said. "No," Eliza countered. "We don't wait. They're expecting Vane. We use him." Hoka's eyes narrowed. "Speak." "We ride in. Just Vane and me," Eliza said. "They'll think he captured me, that he's bringing me to his partners. They'll let me in. You and your men," she looked at Tokahe, "you get the lookouts, silently. Then, when I give the signal, you attack the trail. We'll have them from both sides." It was insane. Tokahe looked at her like she was mad. "They will kill you," Hoka said, flatly. "They'll kill me anyway," Eliza said. "They'll kill all of us if we charge that blockade. This is the only way." Hoka looked at his brother. Tokahe, after a long moment, nodded. "It is a Lakota plan," he said, a faint smile touching his lips. "It is brave and foolish." "Then it will work," Hoka decided. He gave Eliza his knife. "The signal. When I use this," she said, "you come." They dragged Vane back. Eliza untied him. "You will ride in," she hissed, pressing the knife to his ribs, hidden under his jacket. "You will tell them I'm your prisoner. You will smile. You will act normal. If you even flinch, I will sever your spine. Do you understand me?" Vane, his face pale with blood loss and terror, nodded. They mounted, Eliza's hands bound in front of her, the rope looped but not knotted. She rode beside Vane, the knife pricking his side. The rest of the war party melted into the rocks. Tokahe and another brave, Sitan, Hawk, moved like shadows toward the lookouts. Eliza and Vane rode up the trail. "Ho, the camp!" Vane called out, his voice a pathetic croak. A man with a Spencer rifle stepped out from the blockade. "Silas, what in the hell? We thought the Sioux got you." They tried," Vane said, forcing a grin. "But I got something for my trouble. Look here. Found Brody's girl, sniffing after her daddy. She's a fighter." The man looked Eliza up and down, his eyes leering. Well now, that's a right fine prize. Get on in here. The boss has been waiting on you." He moved the stone. Eliza's heart was a drum against her ribs. They were in. The men at the fire turned. Jedediah looked up. His eyes widened. "Eliza, no, run!" "Shut up, old man!" A man in a black derby hat snarled, kicking Jedediah in the ribs. Eliza's hand tightened on the knife. "Not yet. Wait for the lookouts." "What happened to your leg, Silas?" the man in the derby hat asked, walking over. He was the leader. "Got snagged by an arrow," Vane stammered. "You look like hell," the man said, his eyes suspicious. He looked at Eliza, and she looks too calm. "What's the game, Vane?" He reached for Eliza. It was now or never. From the ridge above, a single, perfect hawk cry echoed across the canyon. The signal. Tokahe had the lookouts. Eliza moved. She wasn't a knife fighter, but she was fast. She drove the Lakota knife upward, under Silas Vane's ribs, silencing his betrayal forever. He gasped, his eyes wide, and slumped dead in the saddle. At the same instant, Eliza kicked Boudica, charging the man in the derby hat, and drew her Winchester from its scabbard. "Hoka!" she screamed. The canyon exploded. Rifles cracked from the ridge above, Tokahe and Sitan providing covering fire. Hoka and the other 8 warriors burst from the trail blockade, a blur of motion and terrifying war cries. The prospectors, caught completely by surprise, panicked. They scrambled for rifles. The man in the derby hat fired at Eliza. The bullet tore through her sleeve, grazing her arm, a hot poker of pain. She fired her Winchester from the hip, the bullet taking him in the chest. It was chaos, a brutal, close-quarters fight. Lakota warriors, trained for this, were deadly. But Vane's men were desperate, firing wildly. Eliza leaped from Boudica and ran to her father, cutting his ropes with Hoka's knife. "Get the rifle!" she yelled, handing him the blade. "Get my sharps!" Jedediah, weak but alive, grabbed the heavy rifle. Eliza turned back to the fight. A burly miner was wrestling with Hoka, trying to bring a shotgun to bear. Hoka had lost his knife. Eliza raised her Winchester. "No!" Hoka roared, but it was too late. A different shot rang out. The miner's head snapped back, and he collapsed. Eliza looked up at the ridge. Tokahe was there, his rifle smoking. He had saved his brother. Hoka stared at the dead miner, then at Eliza, then up at his brother. But the fight wasn't over. One of Vane's men, seeing the battle lost, lit the fuse on a stick of dynamite and rolled it toward the mouth of the canyon, trying to seal the pass and trap them. "Tokahe, move!" Eliza shrieked. Tokahe, still exposed on the ridge, was right in the blast radius. He tried to scramble back, but his wounded leg buckled. Hoka, without a second's thought, bounded up the rocks. He grabbed his brother and threw him bodily behind a boulder, taking the full force of the shrapnel himself. The explosion was deafening. Rocks rained down. When the dust cleared, the battle was over. The last of Vane's men were dead or fleeing. Eliza ran to the rock slide. Jedediah was right behind her. Tokahe was alive, shaken but protected. Hoka lay beside him, his chest and side ripped open by the blast. He was dying. Eliza knelt, pressing her hands to the worst of the wounds, but it was useless. There was too much blood. Hoka looked at her. The suspicion was gone. The hatred was gone. "You fight," he gasped, a bloody smile touching his lips. "Hoka." "No," Tokahe whispered, crawling to his brother, tears streaming down his face. Hoka grabbed his brother's shirt. "Lead them, Tokahe. Lead them home." He looked at Eliza. "My mother. Tell her." His eyes glazed. The war chief of the Oglala band was dead. Eliza bowed her head, the smell of gunpowder and blood thick in her throat. She had found her father. But the cost was immeasurable, and in the sudden, terrible silence of the canyon, she heard a new sound, faint but growing, a sound that chilled her far more than any war cry. It was a bugle. The 7th Cavalry was coming. "Soldiers!" Setan yelled from the ridge. "They come fast!" The dynamite, the sustained gunfire. It had been a beacon. Tokahe, his face a mask of grief, rose to his feet. He was the chief now. "We cannot fight them," he said. "We must run." He gave the order. The warriors gathered their wounded, their weapons, and Vane's horses. They would need the mounts. "Eliza," Jedediah said, his hand on her arm. "We have to go. Back to Deadwood." Eliza looked at her father, then at Tokahe. He was strapping his brother's body to a horse. He looked at her, his eyes hollow. "They'll be trapped," Eliza said. "The soldiers are coming up the trail. It's the only way out." Tokahe knew it, too. They were in a box. "No," Eliza said, her mind working. "Not the only way." She pointed to the back of the canyon, where a tiny stream trickled from a crack in the rock. "Where does that go?" Tokahe looked. It feeds the creek, below." "It's a spring," Jedediah said. "The rock is soft there." Vane was blasting. He was trying to widen it. "Can we?" Eliza asked. Tokahe understood. He grabbed the last of Vane's dynamite. It was a desperate gamble. They placed the charge. The bugle was closer now, the shouts of soldiers echoing up the trail. "Go," Tokahe ordered his men. "Get to the horses. Go." He lit the fuse. He, Eliza, and Jedediah ran, diving behind the same rocks that had sheltered Tokahe from the first blast. The explosion was massive. It didn't just move rock. It shattered the back wall of the canyon. A dark, watery tunnel was opened. "The spring," Jedediah coughed. "It's a cave system." "It will lead to the river," Tokahe said. "Go, take your father." "What about you?" Eliza yelled. "I am Lakota," he said, his face terrible in its resolve. "I am chief. I will lead the soldiers away. Buy you time." He was going to sacrifice himself, to lead the cavalry on a chase back up the trail, a chase he couldn't win, while his people escaped through the tunnel. "No," Eliza said. "You are a chief, and a chief does not die for nothing. You go with your people. Your mother is waiting." "Eliza, he's right," Jedediah said. "They'll see us. They'll know." "They'll see me," Eliza said. She grabbed her sharps rifle. "They'll see a white woman. They'll think I'm the only survivor. I'll tell them the Lakota. They saved me. That Vane's men killed them. That they rode north." Tokahe stared at her. "You would lie. For us?" "You bled for my father," Eliza said. "Your brother died for you. I think we're done with sides." She kissed her father's cheek. "Go, Jed. Go with them. They'll get you to the river. Follow it south. It'll lead you to the Niobrara. I'll find you." "Eliza, I won't leave you," he wept. "You must," she said, her voice hard. "Go." She turned to Tokahe. The language barrier was gone. They looked at each other, and there was a universe of things unsaid. He had saved her. She had saved him. They were bound by the blood of Hoka and the betrayal of Vane. He reached out and touched the scratch on her arm from the bullet. Then he gently touched her cheek. "Eliza," he said, just her name. He pressed something into her hand. It was a single, perfect eagle feather, tied with a strip of red cloth. His medicine. "Hokahe," he whispered. "It is a good day to die." But he wasn't saying it about himself. He was saying it about the life they'd known. It was over. "Go," she said, her voice thick. "Lead your people." Tokahe nodded. He turned, helped Jedediah into the dark, watery passage, and, with one last look back, disappeared. Eliza Brody stood alone in the smoking, body-strewn canyon. She sat on a rock, laid the heavy sharps rifle across her lap, and waited. Minutes later, the first blue-coated soldiers charged in, pistols drawn. They stopped, stunned at the carnage. They saw a lone woman, her clothes torn, her arm bloody, sitting calmly amidst the dead. "Ma'am," the young lieutenant shouted, Are you all right? What happened here?" Eliza looked up, her face pale and empty. "My name is Eliza Brody," she said, her voice flat. "Silas Vane and his men, they kidnapped my father. And then, the Sioux attacked. They killed everyone." "The savages!" the lieutenant spat, looking at the dead. "Which way did they go?" Eliza held his gaze. She clutched the eagle feather hidden in her fist. She pointed north. "They rode north, hard, toward the high plains. They said they were going to join Crazy Horse." The lieutenant nodded grimly. "We'll never catch them. But you're safe now, ma'am. We'll take you back to Deadwood." "Yes," Eliza whispered, looking at the dark tunnel where her father and Tokahe had vanished. "I'm safe." She let them help her onto a horse. As they rode away, she did not look back. The war for the Black Hills was just beginning, but her part in it was over. She was returning to the white world, but her heart was marked by the war paint of Hoka and the sacrifice of Tokahe. She was a survivor, but she would never, ever be home again. And that's where Eliza's story truly begins. No longer a simple freighter's daughter, but a woman caught between two worlds, marked by both. The West wasn't won with heroes. It was carved out by survivors, and the scars they carried. What happened to Eliza when she returned to Deadwood, a town that would never understand what she did? And what became of Tokahe, now a chief, leading his shattered people to join the Great Sioux War? The history books don't tell these stories. They don't tell the real stories. If you felt Eliza's journey and want to hear more tales from the raw, untamed frontier, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more real-life dramas every week. Let me know in the comments, what do you think Eliza did next?